Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to today's Helpline Call with your host, James McDonald.
Well, thank you very much, Andrea. I'd like to start by welcoming our coaching participants to our open forum helpline. Now, all of you know what that means is that this was designed as an open forum where we can talk about anything you want. The sky's the limit. Before we jump right in and begin taking your questions, I want to introduce Rick. All of you know Rick by now, Rick Brash, our longtime student and coach, has joined us on the call here to help out. And I say, you know, the more experts we have on the call helping you, the better it is. As you've noticed, Rick from time to time comes up with absolutely brilliant input that otherwise would have been forgotten, and so we really appreciate that. Rick, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Hey, James, my pleasure. Hope you're doing well.
I am doing very, very well. Okay, now, I want to begin by answering a couple of the emails that were sent in after the ad clinic, okay? We got a couple emails that came in regards to the editorial ads, because I think you can tell that Rick and Craig and I are really encouraging when it comes to running the editorial style ads in your local newspaper. They work really well. They're very consistent. They work very, very well. They generate a high quality of seller. Even if the majority of the sellers represent down the road business, let me just explain a couple things. First of all, that doesn't mean that all of the prospects represent down the road business. It means most of it does. Some of it represents immediate seller business, which is great. Okay, but also what you've got to bear in mind is that the quality of those sellers is very, very high. So, I mean, a down the road seller, if you follow up with them effectively, is akin to a post-dated check. I mean, it is absolute money in the bank. So I really encourage, and clearly you can tell Craig and Rick also encourage these editorial ads, but here's the question that we kept getting. If the newspaper insists on including paid advertising in the ad, and if at the bottom of the ad you have to have a disclaimer running along the bottom of the ad, don't consumers, prospects that are reading it, don't they know it's coming from a real estate agent? And doesn't that stop them from reading, much less responding to the editorial style ad? Okay. Something that Craig says several times every single ad clinic call that we do is this, and Rick, I know you've heard Craig say this before, always let the response dictate what you're going to do and what you're going to discontinue doing. In other words, if you were to run an editorial style ad and you weren't really happy with the fact that the newspaper ran paid advertisements somewhere in the ad, however, the response to the editorial ad was excellent, you would continue to run the ad, even though it wasn't as good as it could possibly be, because the response was such, you would continue to run that ad. Now, on the flip side, if the editorial ran exactly the way you wanted it to, without paid advertisement, but the response was not what you wanted, you didn't generate the kind of response that you wanted to generate, well, then the opposite is true. You would have to change the ad or remove it or replace it, even though it didn't say paid. So in other words, it's not the paid advertisement or the disclaimer or any of those things that really determine whether or not you run an ad. It's what? It's the response. Now, here's the other thing that I want to point out. Remember, the purpose of the editorial ad is this. We don't want our prospects' advertising radar to zap the ad before they've read it. At the Super Conference, many of you will remember Craig talking about what in marketing is referred to as your reticular activator. And your reticular activator is this. You notice things that have always been there, but you notice them only when they're applicable to you, especially when it comes to marketing and advertising. And there are all kinds of different examples of this, but one of them, here's an example. You go out and you buy a new car, and you drive that new car off the lot, and over the next few days, guess what you're going to notice on the road? All of the cars exactly the same as the one that you just bought. And they're everywhere. You see them all over the place. You see them in far greater numbers than you did before you purchased yours. And the reason for that is your reticular activator. They were always there, and now you're noticing. The same is true with for sale signs. As soon as you have a for sale sign on your lawn, all of a sudden, you notice every other home for sale in the neighborhood. Now, here's where the reticular activator works with these editorial ads. The idea is this. All we need to do is get consumers to read our headline. If they read the headline and they're not at all remotely considering buying or selling real estate, then they're not even going to notice the article. They're going to immediately eliminate and breeze over that headline. I'm not thinking about selling. This is not applicable to me. They don't even notice that it's there. But then all of a sudden, those who are considering making a move, they see that headline because it looks like an article in the newspaper, and immediately it appeals and applies to them because they're considering making a move. And it's really ingenious. So it's not so much that they look at it and say, hey, this is from a real estate agent. It's that because it looks like an article, it allows them to read it and see it in the first place, as opposed to, what if it looked like an ad? Just outright, it clearly looked like an ad. The problem is ads don't get read in the first place. So a perfectly good prospect that otherwise would have read and seen our article, they dismiss an ad without even looking at it. It's subconscious. Craig calls it your advertising radar. And that's exactly what it is. Your advertising radar is able to identify advertising and immediately dismiss it. So that's why these editorials work the way they do. I cannot be encouraging enough when it comes to running these articles. And what you want to do is this. Find the tiny local newspapers in your marketplace, not the big daily papers, the small local pullout, the paper that's delivered maybe a couple of times a week, and the newspaper that's delivered directly to the door of homeowners in your marketplace. And here's another tip. I would begin with seller, the costly home seller mistake, seller editorial ad. It's probably the best one to begin with, although not the only one to test. So let me throw it over to Rick. And Rick, I know you've got a lot of experience both in terms of coaching and actually running the ads in your own business, but give us your suggestions and expertise as it pertains to this question that I got a couple of times regarding the editorials.
Well, James, the reason we get questions about the editorial is because they don't look normal. They don't look the same. They don't feel the same. So our members sit back and look at them and wonder if this really is going to work. Well, here's the thing. They work. We've been talking about editorials for the better part of 20 years. Our members have succeeded using this format for the better part of 20 years. We have never once said, here, take this and try it. You know what we do? We ask you to work with things that are already proven. The editorial ads, specifically talking to sellers, is a great way to create seller leads. Now, James makes a very valid point. They have a specific fit-in for our lead generation pipeline. And we've designed them to actually get people to react to them very early in the process, whether it's buying or whether it's selling. So if they come to you early in the process, you're now in a position to work with them over a period of time. And for sellers, you would turn on your goal plan after you've spoken with them, and you will likely, very, very likely, get the listing. Because initially you started with them in the beginning. You kept top-of-mind consciousness all through that period, and you eventually listed the property. I don't know how many times I've done it. I couldn't tell you. It continues to work. And if you go to the ad creator in the coaching website, we probably have an editorial for any sector of your local market. Now, lately, again, as James said, our members have been having really great success using the editorial on the sell side of your business. What's the alternative? What's the alternative? That's what I always ask people. What's the alternative? If you don't want to do this, what's the alternative? Our advice is just do what we tell you to do because it works. Run the ads, choose the right paper, right-hand page, above the fold, compelling headline, create the article to look just like everything else in the paper. Same font style, same headline. Try and avoid the box around it. Try and avoid paid advertisement or advertorial when you can. If you can't, so what? Put it in, run the ad, you'll generate leads. Do that with 3 other things across 3 pillars in your business, and you'll be inundated with leads as long as your message is relevant to what's happening locally. And I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, I think the other thing, too, is looking at the editorial ads and thinking, well, yeah, I'll do that, but that's a down-the-line thing. That's way off. There are a billion things I'll do before the editorials. And that's really not true. I would say that the editorials, if you want to generate sellers, and I know that there are so many of you that are in a seller's market where you really want to generate seller leads, I wouldn't delay in running the editorial ads. Choose the least expensive little local papers and get on those right away. It's best to run them with a hotline. If you have your hotline set up, that's the best combination, running those ads along with the non-branded information hotline. But you can use your website as well. It's not as good, but you can test that yourself. But no, it's not something that comes, well, first I'm going to advertise guaranteed sale or what have you. No.
Nope.
You don't want to generate seller leads? I would dive right into the editorial ads, and I would do that almost before anything else. It's that good for generating seller leads.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this. Andrea, let's take any questions that we have from our members on the webinar here today. And remember, guys, the sky's the limit. Rick and I are prepared to talk about anything you like at all. Literally, sky's the limit. We can talk about virtually anything. Rick will talk about the Japanese auto industry if you like. Sky's the limit. Don't be shy. If you want to talk about it, bring it up. And I'm certain that whatever is on your mind, and Rick, this is something very true, isn't it? If there's something that's on your mind, it's very likely it's also on the minds of other participants in the program as well. You're not just helping yourself, you're helping others as well.
For sure. Like we all, a lot of us started together. There's a group of us that start working on this program together, and James and I have been through this program many times with our members. So we know where you're at in different stages. We know what you're thinking. We know what issues and challenges you're facing. But if you don't bring them to the table, we can't offer you some suggestions to deal with them. And guess what? We're not dumb. We know you have issues. We know you have those challenges. We're here to help. So bring it to the table for sure.
All right, Andrea, who have we got?
Yes, sir. We already have several in our queue, but if you haven't done so already, please click the hand icon to address your question verbally to the group or type your question in the chat box. We have Eric Meredith. Your mic is open.
Hello?
Hello, Eric.
How are you doing?
I'm excellent. How are you doing, Eric?
Good, pal. Listen, I'm just curious. I've been in the program about a month now, and the majority of my leads have been coming from distressed sale properties via Google.
Okay.
And I've gotten about 20 leads, and I've got 2 buyers signed up, which is pretty good. But I'm basically in a situation where I need to get more leads, more qualified leads, and more immediate business suggestions.
Well, are you doing anything else besides the Google ad campaigns?
I was doing the small classified in the daily paper, which did not generate a lot of leads, maybe 2 or 3, and I haven't done anything on top of that.
Okay, let me make a couple suggestions. Not knowing what resources you have available to you, what your budget is, things like that. But for immediate business, I would recommend a couple things. First of all, are you opposed to generating seller leads?
No, I'm not. In fact, I would like to build my listing inventory. Okay. I have no listings right now.
Good. Okay, so 2 things that I would recommend doing. One is I would recommend using the Every Door Direct campaign and doing the non-branded online home evaluation direct mail. Now, how many you send out is going to be dependent on whatever your budget is. If you said, look, I only have the budget to be able to send out 500 of them, well, it's not exactly ideal, but to send out 500 to a key high turnover community would be better than sending out none at all.
So when you say Every Door Direct, do you mean postcards?
Yes, I mean postcards, but I mean using the Every Door Direct a program at the post office which allows you to send them out for 14.5 cents each.
So direct mail.
Yeah, you can direct mail them for 14.5 cents each. So here's what that means. You could send out 2,500 for about $350. All right, so we're not talking about, if you did that even once a month to start, I promise you that if you did that and you did a good job of targeting the areas of high turnover, you would definitely generate now business from sellers using that campaign. So it would be,
which ad do you think would be the most effective?
Okay, the one that you're going to do, on one side of the postcard, it offers an online home evaluation. What it says is, find out what your home is worth online. On the other side of the postcard, it says, find out what the home down the street sold for, and it offers an area home sales report using the hotline. So one side of the postcard is the website, the other side is the hotline. And they both offer an area home sales report. They're just worded differently. It is the best combination for generating pure response from sellers.
So side one, find out what your home is worth online. Side two, find out what the home down the street sold for with the hotline.
You got it. Okay.
Now, and I don't actually have the hotline now. Do you think that's a definite must, eh?
Well, if you don't have the, whereabouts are you, by the way?
I'm in Nova Scotia.
Okay, I was going to say, so forget about the Every Door Direct. You're in Canada, all right? So this is far less expensive then. It's preferable that you have the hotline because what it does is it gives people two choices to respond, and that can make a substantial difference. But if you don't have the hotline in time, then you're just going to use the non-branded website on both sides. But do make sure it's non-branded.
Non-branded or less branded?
Same thing.
Well, same thing. Same thing. When I say non-branded, I mean less branded, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Now, that's one. The other strategy is what we've been talking about to start our call off here this morning, which are the editorial style ads. You know, if you're in Nova Scotia, in your little community, you want to find the little community newspaper and run a seller editorial and make sure it references in the headline your area. So, it would say, avoid these critical mistakes when selling your Cape Breton home this year. That would be a headline that if you're even remotely considering selling your home, you're going to be drawn to that headline, and you're going to read the article, and you're going to order the report. Again, without the hotline, it'll work, but it won't work as well. So I would look into getting the hotline. I think they'll set it up for 30 days for free. It's a no-brainer. That hotline is, probably the least expensive marketing tool.
So the local paper here, sorry to interrupt, but the local paper here reaches about 30,000 homes. The cost is about $80 a week. So you're saying avoid critical mistakes for selling homes in the Dartmouth area?
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly what you say. Avoid these critical mistakes when selling your home, when selling your Dartmouth home, is what it's going to say. And have it say this year. Like, make it really timely.
Okay, and the other thing I want to ask you is with the less branded site or ad, sorry, in our area we have to put the company name and my name on the ad. Is that going to hurt the chances?
There's nowhere that we're aware of where you don't have to put that. I mean, virtually everywhere on the planet, if you're a real estate agent running an ad, you need to identify yourself and your brokerage and sometimes even your license number, depending on where you are.
Right.
So that's why you're going to run it along the bottom of the ad. Just like any other ad, run it along the bottom. But here's the difference. This is why we call it less branded. Yes, you're going to identify yourself, but you're just not going to self-promote. Right. No pictures of you with your dog. No great big logos.
I like that picture.
I love it too. But you know what? How about this? Let's generate the lead first, and then once we've generated the lead, then we can brand the response to the lead. But we first have to get the prospect to identify themselves. Right. And what you'll find is it's not even close. A prospect will will far more likely identify themselves without the threat of a salesperson than they will in the presence of a salesperson. It's 100 to 1, clear that if a prospect is going to identify themselves, they're far more likely to do it without the presence of a real estate agent or salesperson than with. That's the only reason we do it.
Right,
Once
okay.
we've identified them, though, we immediately start branding it. We call them back. We introduce ourselves. We send them what they requested. It's branded to us. We've got our dog all over it, whatever. But that's you get the point. And speaking of dogs, Rick's got us all beat in the dog department, don't you, Rick?
Maybe weight-wise, she's huge, yep.
Rick's probably sitting beside her right now, and she weighs about 200 pounds, I'm sure.
Yeah, she's actually sleeping on the ground here at my feet, yep.
Yeah, there
All
you
right.
go.
The other question I have, guys, is regarding the lead conversion ratio. I mean, basically what I'm finding is about 10% I'm able to convert leads to appointments, and the other about 50% I'm finding I either can't get a hold of or they don't want to talk.
All right.
So
let me just carry. Those are all different. Those are different scenarios. Now, first of all, let me say this: as far as 10% converted to appointments, here's the truth: you don't know that yet, and I'll tell you why. There are leads that you've generated where you may convert those leads, but you just might not convert them until next month, or the month after that, or the month after that. Just because on your initial conversation you didn't convert them doesn't mean you will never convert that lead. Do you see what I mean?
So then the next question was going to be, like I'm early in the coaching, so we haven't really discussed a follow-up plan to stay in touch with these leads so that we can convert them later.
So let me give you the basic, the Reader's Digest version. Here's all you're going to do. You're going to call these prospects back in half the time that they indicate they're going to be moving. So you speak to a prospect and they kind of give you the impression, yeah, you know what, we're not doing anything right now. We're just looking around and maybe we'll revisit it in 6 months. You're going to take that lead and you're going to go onto your day timer and you're going to set a callback for half that time. So 3 months, you're going to call them back. And at that time, again, you're going to determine their timing and motivation and see if their timing has changed. But it doesn't mean, see, this is why. Here's what you're going to find. Normal people who have absolutely no interest whatsoever in buying or selling real estate generally do not look for real estate ads, let alone respond to them. People that have motivation to buy or sell tend to do that kind of thing. So don't be surprised when the majority of these prospects, even if not immediately, eventually, they all do something. And that's why. It's like, yeah, sure, they've indicated that with their actions. Okay, now here's the other thing I want to point out. You said about 50% either I can't get a hold of or don't want to talk to me. Those are two very completely different things.
Yep.
Not getting a hold of somebody is a very separate problem than getting a hold of somebody and they don't want to talk to you. Okay? They're two separate.
25.
Yeah, they're two separate problems that need to be addressed differently. Okay?
Yeah.
As far as reaching the prospect in the first place, number one, you got to try to call them back immediately. That'll make a big difference. But also, remember that you want to call them back from a number that doesn't look like a telemarketer is calling them. They're far more likely to answer the phone if you call them back from like a local cell phone or something like that.
Yeah, that's
okay.
what I'm doing.
Yeah, try that. And also, when you call from your cell phone, what shows up on the caller display? Okay, that's very important as well. So why don't you do this? Call yourself at home from your cell phone and see what appears on the screen when you call. Because if it's a name and a phone number that they don't recognize, it's likely they'll let it go to voicemail. If it's just a number, though, they're more likely to answer that. And you can experiment vice versa. So test those kinds of things. And get more. But and also, of course, you need to be diligent with follow-up as well. You can't just try somebody once or even twice and think that's it. I tried and they're not there and that's the end of it. Now, as far as them not wanting to talk to you, that's the script. The introduction in the script is going to frame the conversation. If done well, I assure you it will be the very rare exception that somebody doesn't want to speak to you.
Yep.
If you really speak slowly and clearly and say, "Hi, Rick, it's James with Craig Proctor's office from Remax calling you, and I'm just calling because I received your request for the distress sale properties from my website, and I wanted to give you a very quick courtesy call and let you know I'm preparing those properties for you right now, and you should receive them shortly. I hope that's okay, Rick."
Yep.
It is impossible.
Thank you very much.
It is impossible not to say thank you. You know, but of course, yes. That's something that you're going to find you'll get better and better at the more you do it.
Okay.
Okay. So you've got some ideas there. I would, and I'd say 30,000 circulation for that paper for $80. Rick, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think that's a killer deal.
I'd be all over it. Absolutely all over. Now, here's something else to keep in mind. You can probably even get that price reduced yet again if you sit down with the newspaper and you're willing to commit. Newspapers
I think 20% discount if I commit to a contract.
There you go. So newspapers are in the real estate business as well. Their real estate is just pages. So the more you do with them, the cheaper it gets. And by the way, the more you do with them, the more leads you generate every single time that paper goes out.
So are you guys saying that that's a more effective way than Google?
No, we're not saying it's more effective. We're saying it's just very effective. Your business lead generation strategy needs to be, run over 3 or 4 pillars. All right. So one of them is definitely Google. Another one, as James mentioned to you, is direct mail. In the U.S., we use the Everdoor Direct campaign. In Canada, we use the unaddressed ad mail.
Right.
Okay, very, very effective. The third pillar today we've talked about is getting back into that paper and running the right message that people will see. Now, sitting here today, where I am, where James is, we don't know exactly what the right message is, but good marketers continue to test, continue to track, continue to tweak, and it's all based on what's trending locally. And
so what would you say a good response rate would be for the postcards, for example?
1 or 2%.
Okay, and in the paper?
Probably a little bit better, but again, depending on the ad. Classified display ads create, if the classified display ad has a relevant answer to a question locally, you can create a response from 85% of the people who are looking at it. Very interesting how classified displays work. Editorials create a response from somebody much earlier in the process, but they're all critical responses for your pipeline. And if you run all of these correctly, if the 3 M's balance in your marketing pillars, you're inundated with leads. That's the key. Just make sure the message is correct for the market, and if the medium is used, you'll get leads. It's really simple.
Is there any formula for creating the right message?
The formula is this: know your local market. You've got to sit down with that MLS. You've got to pull off the last 90 days worth of sales from your MLS, have a good look at it, and determine what's trending locally. Your marketing needs to reflect the busiest local trend. And we don't know what that is. It could be a geographical term or a location. It could be a price range. It could be a house style. It could be something going on. But if you can tap into that, you can create leads all day long.
Okay, sir.
Thanks very much for your questions. I think that was helpful for everybody. All right, Andrea, who's next?
Our next guest is Kevin Flaherty. Your mic is open. Kevin? Okay, we'll move on to Sean Radcliffe. Your mic is open.
Hi, guys. My question is regarding the AMS hotline. Is there a way that it alerts you when you're not sitting in front of your computer that you actually have a lead going into it?
Well, I think you can have it come to your phone.
So only if the caller called you live, and then you're saying it would then ring over to your phone and you would get them live, or
well, you can set it up that way. There's lots of things you can do with a smartphone these days. I'm really not that up on technology, but I know if you have your phone in your pocket, your current lead flow is right there in your pocket with you. Both Success website and Automated Marketing Solutions can set all that up for you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I get everything through Success via email, but I'm just wondering is that I had a couple of leads go through my 800 line, and
Well, with the 800 line, so what you do with the 800 line is you can have everything forwarded to an email. And that's one of the settings. When you put a script up in a mailbox, sit down at your control panel, load the script in, and then tell the mailbox what to do with responses. And I think you can send it to up to 3 emails. You can even send the WAV file, the actual recording, along with that email. It's all set up to follow you. Everything can follow you.
Okay,
right, and really what you're talking about is it's more setting up the alert on your smartphone to notify you when you have an email. That's really what you're saying. And, you know, depending on what smartphone you're using, you can set up an individual inbox just for your success website leads, for example, or just for your AMS leads, if you want to, so that it notifies you in a particular way when you have an email that's come into that email box, as opposed to your regular, you know, work or personal email, that you can separate it, and that way you know. But, you know, I mean, these days with, you know, with your email on your smartphone, you know, it would be pretty likely that not a lot of time would go by without you recognizing that a lead has come in. But it really is important that you are notified, or that you do know, because it makes a huge difference if you can put yourself in a position to follow up with that lead very, very quickly. It makes all the difference, not just in terms of reaching the prospect, but even more in terms of having a great conversation with that prospect using the script. The prospect is so much more likely to be thinking about real estate if you can call them back quickly. You know, it's sort of like they're in real estate mode, and when you're talking to somebody in real estate mode, it's very, very easy to convert that lead. So I hope that helps. All right, Andrea, who's next?
Our next question comes from Vic McCarrion. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, James. Good morning, Rick.
Hey,
Hi,
Vic.
How are you?
Good.
My question is to Rick, please. Rick, I have a question. If you ask the seller if the decision maker is going to be there and they say no, that's one of my questions. And if I convince them that they were there and I went and I see the wife is walking out for grocery or something and I'm going to show to the husband, how could you answer those 2 questions for me? Like I should do it politely to the seller, like I want the decision maker to be there on the phone, and when I'm there, they are actually there, you know?
Okay, so it's a great question. So the one scenario you painted, you've made the appointment, you're expecting both people to be there, you arrive and one of them is leaving. You know what? That's probably one of those things you're going to have to live with.
Yeah.
You know, if she's running out the door and you're running in the door, there's probably not a whole lot you can do with that. But you're right. Prior to getting to the appointment, one of the questions I ask to this person I'm talking to is, are you the only person on the title? Are you the owner of the home? And I'll say, are you on title with your husband? Or vice versa with your wife? And they'll say, yeah, we both own it. And I'll say, well, will I be meeting with both of you? And if they say yes, great. If they say no, I'll say, well, you know, I'm quite sure that both of you will have questions on the selling process, so what's a good time for me to come over when you're both available? And I go ahead and set the appointment that way. I always, on a listing scenario, I always meet with both people, because I can't list the house if only one of them sell it, only one of them sign the listing contract. I have to have both signatures in Alberta, so I always try and meet with them both.
Yes, and that's a great way. And let's suppose when I went there and the husband was there, should I give the listing presentation?
You know, I would say out of courtesy, you probably have to. He's expecting you. You've talked about it on the phone. You might want to go over and give him a really good sense as to what's going on. Yeah. And I would do it. I would probably do it. And you know what? You may have to go back and do it again. Yeah. It sucks. You may have to go back. But here's the other side of this. This is where you get better and better and better at building value into your appointment. So if you create a real value proposition for both owners of that property, one of them isn't going to leave as you're getting there. It won't happen, because you've created something that they really have to investigate before they put their house up for sale. And they'll be waiting for you to show up and go over that. It just takes a bit of practice, that's all. But remember, the person leaving is an objection. and objections are raised in the absence of value. She didn't see value, or he didn't see value in hanging around and having that chat. Or the other side of this might be that something you don't know. This might be a divorce. It might be a scenario where they're not comfortable with you representing both of them. You'll never know. But if I got there and she's leaving, I'm going in, I'm doing my job.
Okay. Thank you very much, Steph.
Okay, our next question comes from Susan Williams. Your line is open.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, good. Okay, it's the first time I did it. I have a question about the cards. When you send the cards, I studied some areas, so I know where I want to send them, and I know what I want to send. After I send them one time, do I send them again to the same place? Do I change the card still to the same place, or do I go different places?
Same place. You want to work consistently with the best producing area that you can find.
Okay.
It's a consistent mail-out. Craig would tell you that for the better part of 20 years, he put the same cards into the same neighborhoods over and over and over again. Every 2 or 3 weeks is when you want to put your card out there. And guess what? You'll have a mailing where you don't create any leads. And you'll think to yourself, oh, what a waste of time, what a waste. It's not that way at all. James talked about it earlier. The reticular activator turns itself on and turns itself off with people. And all of a sudden, you'll do a mailing. It'll be the end of May, you'll put a mailing out, and you'll get 8 or 9 people call you for that home evaluation. That's the way the cards work.
And I want you to think of it this way. What you're going to do as time goes on is you're going to add more homes to your distribution. It's not that you're going to take away and say, okay, I'm going to send to this area now instead of this area. You're going to add to it. So Craig didn't start off by sending, 20,000 postcards at a time. He didn't begin that way. It built to that level. It started off with a few thousand, and then a couple thousand went to 5,000, which went to 10,000, which eventually went to 15 and 20,000. But it was adding on, not moving that distribution around. If you send out 2,500 postcards to 5,000 postcards to the same 2,500, 5,000 properties, what you'll notice in looking at MLS is that there's a turnover in that particular geographical area. And if you look at it, you can say 1 in 5 homes will be listed on the market this year. 1 in 5 will be on the market this year. That means that 1 in 10 will be listed in the next 6 months, which means 1 in 20 will be listed in the next 90 days. You see how the math works? Which means that 1 out of 60 properties are going to be listed within the month. You send out 60 postcards, the odds say that 1 out of those 60s, one out of 60 will be on the market within 30 days. So now you're not sending out 60 though, you're sending out 2,500. Now all of a sudden we're talking about all kinds of prospective immediate sellers that are getting that message in their hand that are going to be listing their home immediately for sale. It's just simple math. And what you're doing is you're playing the odds. So so that was a really, really good question, and I hope that clarifies it.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Beyond Sophie. Please go ahead. Beyond, your line is open.
Hello,
Okay.
hello?
We'll move on. We do have some chat questions. Hold on one more moment, and I will open up my chat box to address those. Okay, our first is, when a prospect goes to our site and requests a report, is it always sent as soon as possible?
I can think of one exception to that rule. The answer is yes. You always want to send the information as soon as you possibly can. However, calling the prospect back using the universal script is more important than sending the information first. So the first thing that you do is call them back. Not send the information, it's to call them back and convert the lead. Okay, now, having said that, you always want to send the information that they requested. However, the only exception might be on the online home evaluation. If a prospect requests the online home evaluation, you would prefer to determine first their timing and motivation on the phone. And if you find out that they're super motivated, you'd rather not send them the online area home sales report. You'd much rather book an appointment to give them a much more accurate idea of what their home would sell for. The problem with sending them the area home sales report is they may look at that and think that that information is good enough, and now they don't need the evaluation. It takes away from your offer. So that would be the only exception. And Rick, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but maybe that helps.
No, I agree. I think as soon as we get a request, I think the onus is upon us to fulfill that request. But like James is saying, it's pretty hard to fulfill a request for an online home evaluation until we have enough information to work with. And that gives us a pretty good excuse to call. And guys, everybody needs to really get this. We're never going to replace the call with a report. It's never, ever going to happen. And if you put a lot of faith in the report to help you out in your business, your faith is in the wrong place. Yes, we send the report. Yes, we send the feature sheet on our listing. Yes, we send the list or a few that we've promised. For sure we do that. But delegate that to somebody else in your business. Just don't even worry about it. Get on the phone. Get on the phone and make the call and forget about the report. Send it, yes, but don't worry about it. Get on the phone. That's the most crucial thing. And what James is saying here fits in with that. A request comes in for a home evaluation. Holy mackerel. What am I evaluating? What am I looking at? There's 5 or 6 questions that were answered on the webpage, but I can't do a successful, accurate, detailed evaluation with that information. What a great excuse to call. Hi, James. It's Rick Brash with Keller Williams. The reason I'm calling is earlier today you asked for some information about the value of your home. I'm just calling to let you know I got some of the information. I just need to ask a couple of questions. You want to just create an understanding from that prospect that you want to do a good job. And you'll easily segue into an appointment because guess what? You can't do it over the phone. You can't do it with email. So get on the phone, create the appointment, go do the evaluation, and probably list the house when you're there.
Okay, our next question comes from Jim. My goal is to build a business and not work weekends. At what point is it a good time to look at hiring agents?
Oh, I love this one. Great question.
Go ahead,
take this
Rick.
one? Okay,
Yeah,
so look.
please do.
So let me tell you some of the things that James and I have worked with over the years in this organization. One of the most common questions we get is, when should I hire? When should I grow my team? When should I make myself look really successful with people? Well, here's when you do it. And I love this definition. And if everybody's taking notes, write this down. We only hire out of necessity. And Craig has beaten that into our heads over the years. We only hire out of necessity. When you're run ragged and can't get to your leads, can't get on all the appointments, and can't get the paperwork done, time to make some decisions about getting some help. Your first hire, as Craig would tell you, is going to be an administrative support person. Someone who can take the paperwork load off of your shoulders and let you focus even more on the dollar productive activities, which are, by the way, making calls, following up on your appointments, and going on the appointments, okay? The second thing you're going to do when your administration person is working, humming along, getting it all done, and you're again overrun with prospective opportunity called leads, you're going to bring on someone who can replicate what you would do. And they will take a buyer's presentation, maybe a listing presentation, and go out and simply create the same results that you would do using those tools. But until you're overrun, I don't think it's necessary to hire anybody. And the flip side to this is, until you're really good at this, you're going to have a tough time teaching someone else to do it because you'll simply teach them your bad habits. So that might not be the answer that people are looking for. Now, over the years, we've seen people come on board with us and hire for the sake of hiring. Oh, look, right. I've got 9 people on my team. We've also seen people like that implode because they didn't hire correctly or hire smart. And we want you to be very, very careful when you start to leverage with people. It's a great leverage point, but don't do it too soon. Otherwise, you'll find yourself not having anything to do and losing money.
Let me also make this suggestion as well that Craig would certainly stand behind is the first person you hire is not who you think. Okay, you're talking about, well, I don't want to work on the weekends, so obviously it stands to reason, well, a lot of real estate is done on the weekends, so I would want to hire a licensed agent, maybe an outside sales agent, to help with buyers and sellers so that they can go and take over that, a lot of that work that's done on the weekend. Here's the problem with that, though. What you're doing is you're cutting into your profitability. What you're doing is you're delegating away what actually makes you money, which is working with buyers and sellers. There will be a time when we're going to be able to put ourselves in a position to be profitable and do that, but it is not in the beginning. In the beginning, what is going to have a bigger impact is this. You're going to hire somebody without a real estate license, and they are going to handle all of the unlicensed administrative $8 to $15 an hour activity that has to get done but doesn't have to get done by you. And by them doing that, it's going to give you a lot of time back, a lot of time to obviously do the kinds of things that you want to do. There's a reason that you don't want to work on the weekends, and it's because you want to spend more time with people that are important to you, or you want to do things that you want to do. So if an administrative person could take away all of the administrative work, all of the unlicensed work, all of the $8 to $15 an hour activity, if that could be removed from you and put on to somebody that you're paying, $10 an hour, $15 an hour at the most to handle for you, that would free you up to do two things. One, it would free you up to be able to do more of the kinds of things that clearly you want to do with the people you want to do them with. And it would also free you up to spend more of your time on the dollar productive elements of your business. That is, spending more time working with buyers and sellers that actually make you money as opposed to running around getting keys cut, as an example, which makes you $0.
Right.
So think of it in those terms as well. There is a logical order to hiring. And eventually you get to a point where by hiring that unlicensed administrative person, it's allowed you to work on the marketing, which has allowed you to generate an overflow of business. As soon as you generate an overflow of business that you yourself can't handle, that is when it will be appropriate for you to bring on a licensed person. The moment you bring on that licensed person,
that's your leverage point for sure.
You now just have time on your weekends because you can offload a lot of your weekend work. You can offload a lot of that onto your outside salesperson, yet still be profitable at the same time. So, and by the way, it can happen a lot more quickly than you think if you do it in that correct order.
Yep.
And again, out of necessity, there's no reason why this has to take a long time. This can happen over the course of a few months. Rick?
Yep, I agree.
Okay, great question. Go for it, Andrea.
We have a couple of follow-ups from members regarding the hiring, and they ask, when we hire the agent, do we have them join us on the calls and the webinars and all of the training?
No. They don't need, we practice what is called specialization. Specialization means you need to be really good at the part that you do. In other words, if you take an agent on and you train them how to market, how to run the system, you're essentially paying for them to learn how to leave you. Now, I'm not saying that they'll be successful when they do that because it's unlikely, but the bigger picture is it's unnecessary. If you hire an administrative person, the administrative person needs to be really good at the tasks that you have them doing. That's what they need to specialize on. Now, let me give you an example of that. If you hire an inside salesperson eventually to handle all of the follow-up phone calls, okay, lead conversion, I would recommend, what call do you think would be really helpful for them to be on every week? The Thursday role play call, yes, but they don't need to come on the Friday ad clinic call to learn how to generate the leads in the first place. They don't need to know how to do that. All that's going to do is take away from their expertise at what they do need to be good at, which is lead conversion. So, be very careful about, how and who and to what degree you're training your people. What we don't want to have happen is this. You spend all this effort and time finding somebody who's really good. You bring them on, you train them, you've got them up and running now, they've really made a big impact on your business, which has impacted your life very positively. Then all of a sudden they say, hey, I get this, I'm going to go do it myself. Hey, thanks for all of the free training that you've invested thousands of dollars in, but I get it now. I have all the stuff. I completely understand this from top to bottom. Now I'm going to just go do it on my own. Now, you could say, yeah, but the likeliness of them being successful at it is very slight. It doesn't matter. They've still left you. And now you're left at square one. Now you've got to find somebody and go through the process again. So my suggestion is, yeah, it's unnecessary to do that. They need to be good at the parts that they are involved in. And they really don't need to understand anything else. Practice specialization and make sure they're good at those things. Rick, I don't know if you want to add to that, but that certainly is a logical way of looking at it.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. I think one of the things we want to remember as rainmakers of our business is it's up to us to train someone to become really good. So we're going to start that process by bringing on someone who has enough humility that they can be trained. And there are certain calls where it's appropriate to bring your team on. There may be some calls that you do with your coach when it's appropriate for you to be on the call with your coach and maybe have a couple more people on there with you. I can think of one, maybe when the coach works with you on your buyer's presentation or works with you on your selling presentation. You do those calls with Craig, you work on it individually, but there comes a time when it makes sense to train as a team. And I think your coach can fit into that very, very well. But overall, you want to make sure that you learn this as best as you can because the training falls on your shoulders and you need to be able to train.
Awesome. All right, let's take a couple more if we have them, Andrea.
Yes, sir. Our next is an audio question. It comes from Jana Classy. Your phone line is open. Jana? Okay, we'll move on. Our next chat question is from Kino. I get leads from Success website based on my Google AdWords and get a phone number as well as an email address. I've called but gotten no answer from 2 leads. Should I just email them?
Well, here's my question back to you is what would you email them? What would you send them that would compel them to call you? And we can tell you, sitting here, that there's not much you can send. So here's the suggestion. Keep calling. Be versatile. Learn some techniques at getting people home. Call in the morning. Use call blocking. Don't call from the office. Don't have Century 21 or Keller Williams in your call display. Keep trying. Try calling back when that person created the lead at the same time. Try calling at lunchtime. Try calling just after dinner if they give you a home number. Try all those techniques. Be versatile, and you'll eventually get people home. And you know what? Here's the bottom line, is you're not going to get them all. That's sort of the modus operandi of working with the internet. People love to stay anonymous and hide behind the screen. But keep generating leads. Keep the leads coming in because you're going to, as you become a better marketer, you're going to create better and more, I'm saying that wrong. You're going to create more grade A leads that will answer their phone, that will give you all the goods pertaining to their project of buying or selling. And that's versus the grade C leads that just give you a name and a phone number. Keep working. Make sure your message is strong. Have a compelling reason to create the lead, and you'll get them. But versatility is what James taught me early in my career with the system. And be versatile. Call all the time, and eventually you'll get them.
Yep. That's great advice. All right, let's take one more for today, Andrea.
Yes, sir. A final question comes from Minu. I'm sending 5,000 online free home evaluation postcards. First question is, when I follow up with a request, should I offer any guarantee to be able to get the appointment? Second question is, what kind of guarantee do you suggest to offer when I go for the listing presentation to stand out and to make it interesting for the seller?
Okay, well, Rick, I'll get your input on this, but let me start by suggesting that what you need to do is you need to compartmentalize at what point you want to set yourself apart, okay? The universal script has been designed to get you face-to-face with a worthy prospect. So you sent out these online home evaluations. Prospects are requesting an evaluation of their home. What we know about these prospects is they want to know the value of their home. That's why they've requested the information. They want to know the value of their property. So you call them back, and using the universal script, you ask the probing questions that help you determine, do they want to know the value of their home because they're serious and motivated to sell, or is it for another reason? And for those that are motivated to get their home on the market, who are motivated to sell, what we're going to do is we're going to use the offer that's written in the universal script to compel that prospect to meet with you. And it has nothing to do with you making a guarantee of any kind. See, here's the difference. The guarantees are designed to compel the prospect to do business with you. But that's not the purpose of a phone call. The purpose of the phone call isn't to compel the prospect to do business with you. The purpose of the phone call is to compel the prospect to meet with you. We've got to meet with them before we can compel them to do business with us. Trying to get them to list their home over the phone is completely fruitless. That's not the objective. So over the phone, you do not make any kind of guarantees or anything like that. What you're doing is you're using the universal script and you're making that universal offer that the seller would, or at least a worthy seller, would be very likely to accept. And that offer is, if I can take a look at your home, I can be much more accurate in determining the likely sales price. But more importantly, I can point out some inexpensive tips, some things to do and not do to further increase the value of your property while you're preparing it for sale. Plus, we can go over a net sheet so you'll know exactly what you'll have left in your pocket once all the various closing costs are incurred. We can also talk about timing and when might be the best time for you to do something. It's absolutely free. There's no obligation whatsoever. And certainly I'm flexible. What would be good for you? Days, evenings, weekends? What would you prefer? That's the offer. Now, that offer didn't offer any kind of guarantee, nor did it suggest that they need to hire you to list their property. The purpose of that offer was to do one thing and one thing only: get an appointment to meet with them. Right. It is at that time when you meet with them, that's when you're going to use your guarantees. What is the purpose of the meeting? The purpose of the meeting is to compel them to hire you. Now, that is when you're going to use a series of unique selling propositions, including guarantees, to compel them, when face-to-face, to sign on the dotted line and hire you. So you need to compartmentalize what it is I'm trying to do. What's the purpose of running an ad? It's to drive traffic to your website and hotline. What's the purpose of your hotline and website? It's to compel the worthy prospects to raise their hands, ask for the information, and identify themselves, give up their anonymity. What's the purpose of the phone call? It's to determine who the worthy prospects are and compel them to meet with you. What's the purpose of the meeting? Purpose of the meeting is to compel them to hire you. Everything has a reason. It's a series of baby steps. Right. Rick, did I explain that well?
Oh no, you're dead on the money, James. And here's what we want to be careful of. Here's the fear I see that conjures up in my mind. If we start talking about the guarantees that we're going to perform with a less branded lead, even though we've identified ourselves as an agent with a certain company, unless we're really, really killer good with the script, we start talking about us. And the minute you start talking about us as realtors with a prospect from a less branded lead, we start to shut them down. Remember, they didn't come to us because of who we were or what we do on a less branded marketing campaign. They came simply seeking an answer to a question. And I think if we're not careful and we start giving them all these USP things in this call that James is talking about, we're going to diminish our success. Now, there probably is a time to have that conversation, and if you go into the BXL library, bxlprinters.com, you'll see some examples in there of branded cards that went into Craig's neighborhoods and identified Craig as the guy that had the guaranteed sale program. All right, that's a little bit of a different conversation. That's a branded advertising piece, and the call is probably going to come into the hotline, or, that's going to be first and foremost on people's minds when they get on the phone. Craig, I saw your card. It was in your mail. How does that guarantee program thing work? We better be prepared to answer that question. But for the less branded approach, simply offering the area sales report or the online home evaluation, let's stick with the script. The script doesn't offer a guarantee. It doesn't offer any kind of promises.
It doesn't need to.
That's right. Yes, we talk a little bit about us in our introduction, but let's stay focused on the needs of the prospect. And when you do that really articulately, you create appointments over and over and over again. So, Manu, I know where you're going with this. We talked about this the other day, But my suggestion is run this system the way it was designed, and you should be able to get the appointments, no problem.
Great advice. Okay. Rick, first of all, thank you so much for joining us as always. It's great to have your input. Again, thank you so much for that. I know everybody appreciates it based on our feedback that we. Andrea, as always, you're lovely. Thank you so much for helping.
My pleasure.
So best of luck, everybody. I hope you got all your questions answered. If you didn't, you can email your coach as well as myself, James, at craigproctor.com.